Hello and welcome back to the Trick Play Podcast on Fresh Take Network. I'm Simon Chaskovsky here with Caleb Peterson.
I had to go anger bike. I just biked up a hill because I was so mad.
I was up 20 goddamn points. Tyreek Hill sucks. God damn it. I'm so mad.
And I thought I was going to be rich. Feel an entire parking structure with that.
Build an entire baseball stadium. Yankee Stadium is filled with Lambos. Hello and welcome back to the Trick Play Podcast on the Fresh Take Network. I'm Simon Chaskovsky here with Caleb Peterson, and shortly we'll be breaking down all the sports-related news, rumors, and drama that you will want to hear about. And this week we have quite the loaded week, to say the least. We'll be starting off by talking about the Pro Bowl rosters that got released earlier today. Still a couple players left to be named, I believe, but other than that, we've got a fairly good look at what both sides of both AFC and NFC are going to look like. Then we'll get into Justin Fields potentially being traded and whether the Bears should go with him or Caleb Williams, as it's looking like they've got that first overall pick. Then, as we move into, we're going to talk about college football, which we don't talk about too much, but when the semifinals come around, I think we got to hit on it. So we'll be touching in on that. Moving into the NHL, the All-Star Game rosters mostly got released. We're just waiting on the fan vote, but we'll be talking about the players we know will be going into it. Then, in the NBA, we'll be talking about the OG Anunoby trade that sent him to the Knicks, as well as RJ Barrett back to Canada. Make sure to stick around till the end of this episode, as we have a big announcement regarding next week's episode. So make sure to stick around for that. Make sure to check us out on YouTube, Fresh Take Network, TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter, as we have new content coming out each and every week on each and every one of those platforms. I said that a little weird. Caleb, are you ready to get into it?
Absolutely. So as the NFL season winds to a close here with Week 18, the Pro Bowl rosters have been announced. There's quite a few interesting names, quite a few interesting omissions. As a Seahawks fan, I have a decent amount to say about my team, and perhaps not all positive, but we'll get to that eventually. We'll kind of go through each segment. We've got offense and defense for AFC and offense and defense for the NFC. We'll just kind of go through, talk about anything we find notable, any players that we think we should have been included, any players we're surprised that were included, and we'll go through like that. So, Simon, we'll start off with the AFC offense. Is there anything that kind of jumps out to you about that roster?
Not really, to be honest with you. It just seems like a lot of obvious ones. The one thing that I pointed out to you before the podcast was the Travis Kelce pick, because I felt like all year I've been hearing that he's just been having a down year, but I guess I was wrong on that one. Other than that, I mean, I don't have much to be mad about here. It seems like pretty clear cut, at least to me.
Yeah, I think the ones that are with Kelce, I think it's again, because we kind of talked about this before the podcast. Kelce being the starter is a little bit interesting because he definitely has been having a down year. That's been a big thing, that he hasn't really performed up to the standard, and that's part of why the Chiefs aren't doing as well, because Mahomes doesn't have any receivers, and he doesn't have Kelce as the same level of safety blanket. He's kind of showing a little bit of his age, and he's not playing quite to the same level. But he's still it's one of those selections I'm not totally mad about, because I'm like, who do you replace him with? Is the question.
And that is the tough thing.
The only other player I can think of is Mark Andrews on the Ravens, but he's injured. Maybe like if you're looking for more deep cuts, like Pat Freiermuth on the Steelers. But other than that, you're not looking too far. I would maybe switch around Njoku and Kelce to get Njoku as the starter. But other than that, it doesn't look too bad.
Yeah, I feel like I've heard a lot more about Njoku than I have Kelce this year. That's other than the Taylor Swift shit. But that's more why I'm shocked about Travis Kelce.
He's been having a fantastic year.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm more shocked about the Travis Kelce. I feel like I've been hearing more about him off the field than I have on it, which just, I don't know. Yeah. Obviously, they couldn't really leave him out, I guess, right? That's one of those picks where, it's hard to leave him out just because of the year he's been having off the field.
Well, and he's still, the other thing is, it's another thing I said to you before the podcast, it's A down year for Travis Kelce is still a fantastic year for anybody else.
Yeah, for sure.
So, like Travis Kelce still has, I believe, the second highest receiving yards for a tight end this year, only behind George Kittle. So he's still having a decent season. It's just normally we wouldn't even see him second place. That's the kind of thing where it's like he is having a down year for his standards, but in terms of everybody else, it's still not shocking that he gets that spot. Because the other Evan Ingram potentially could have got the spot, but I don't know if he's been that consistent in order to get that. And Njoku is also up there. And after that, in terms of AFC tight ends, there's not really any other competition. So that makes sense in terms of that choice.
Yeah, and fair enough. Like, I think, like I said, it's pretty clear cut. Like, the best are the best. You're not going to be shocked by a lot of the major picks on here. I think, I don't know. I feel like, this is where my NFL casual is going to come out a little bit on how little I've been able to watch this year, but I feel like I haven't heard a lot about Amari Cooper. Like, unless he's just been having an incredible year.
Amari Cooper has had a fantastic year.
Okay, well, there you go. Like, that's the one that sticks out to me. It's just like, I feel like I hadn't heard a lot about him, but again,
he recently set the Browns single game receiving yards record.
Well, there you go. Shows how little I've paid attention this year. But like, other than that, like you said,
285 receiving yards in a game on Christmas Eve.
Well, there you go. Like, he's
had 1,250 yards on the year so far, 5 touchdowns.
Yeah. And that sounds about right. Like, it's just, other than that, nobody on this list really sticks out to me as somebody we really need to be that shocked about. Like, it's just, these are the best guys in the NFL.
Well, there's one, and I'll pose this question to you, Simon.
Okay.
I have my own opinion on this, but do you think that Mahomes should be in the Pro Bowl?
Right. Okay. So I'd have to pull up his stats. I do not have
Tua and Lamar are pretty. Tua and Lamar are pretty solidified. The ones that you're probably looking at is like guy like Josh Allen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's been the
probably
conversation all year long about the fact that Patrick Mahomes just hasn't been having as good of a year, right? So I think, I mean, I don't know. Like, what type of season has Josh Allen been having, I guess? Because I don't have his stats in front of me currently.
It's been like the Bills season. It's been very up and down, but he's still, I think the stats don't fully tell the whole story in terms of Josh Allen, because he's still been kind of willing his team to wins a lot of the time. Because the other thing you have to think about is the Chiefs have a significantly better defense than the Bills do, and so that's kind of been propelling them to a lot of wins. I think performance-wise, I think Josh Allen has outplayed Mahomes, and I do think the Mahomes name kind of got him that spot. If I'm being honest, I do think Josh Allen probably should have made it in over Mahomes, even though I think Josh Allen's interception numbers are pretty rough this year. It's still still kind of, I think, outweighed by just the overall, like, if you're watching the games from week to week, he's putting a little bit more out there for you in terms of actually providing a good contribution to his team.
Yeah, and looking at Mahomes, it's about what I expected. Not even 30 touchdowns on the season. Like, it's just a down year for him. Like, he just hasn't looked like Mahomes, right? And that's the big thing. Where, like, I think at this point we've just learned to expect more from him. And at certain points this year, he's just been bad. Like, it's as simple as that. He's just not been good. And I don't know. I guess I'm curious on, it'd be hard to leave him out, I guess. Like you said, Josh Allen is the main other pick. Like, is there anybody else that you can really think of that would maybe be able to take that spot from him?
Honestly, this is a little bit tougher. I could say the difficult thing about quarterbacks this year is that a lot of them have been injured. So I'm like, if I'm looking at a lot of these other teams and I'm thinking, who are the star quarterbacks? They've either had, in the AFC, they've either had down years or have been injured. Like Justin Herbert injured. You're looking at Joe Burrow injured, obviously. You're looking
Yeah.
at even it's a little bit more of a stretch, but like Deshaun Watson injured. Trevor Lawrence is currently he's a little bit more kind of on the mend, and also has had a little bit less of a successful year, but also currently injured, and questionable to play in their next game. So it kind of limits your options. Josh Allen is the big one. That's the big snub. The other one, the only other one I could think would be C.J. Stroud. That would be my only other case I could make to put him over
Yeah.
a guy like Mahomes.
And that one's tough, right? Because he's had such an incredible rookie season, taking the Texans from one of the worst teams in the NFL to, do they have a playoff spot yet, or are they still fighting for it? I know they're close.
So they play their last game against the Colts, and that one is basically winning in.
Okay, and that's
If they
basically
lose,
what I've heard.
if they lose, they're out. If they win, they're in, and they could still potentially steal the division from the Jaguars.
Jeez, like I don't know. It feels weird to even have him out, right? Like having three quarterbacks in this situation where there's not really anybody who jumps off the stat sheet at you is just kind of, I don't know. It feels a little odd. I'm definitely with you on that one, where it's like Patrick Mahomes is going to make it in because he's Patrick Mahomes, but he definitely hasn't had the type of season that we expect from him at this point. So, I don't know.
If there was any year for Mahomes to miss a Pro Bowl, it would have been this year, because
Yeah.
I feel like that the Chiefs aren't a stupid organization. They know what the problems are. The problems with the Chiefs are as obvious to anybody who's watched any of their games. It's that Mahomes has no weapons. When Rashee Rice is your number one targeted player, you have issues. They're gonna go out in the offseason. They're gonna get some more guys. They're gonna overhaul things, but yeah, it's it does show how consistent he's been over his career, and it's not like he's had. If you just look at the stats, it's not like it's the biggest kind of evil in the world, and I'd say he's probably quarterback 4, but I'd probably have a guy like Josh Allen in over him.
Yeah, and that's fair. I think in this type of situation where like really, I don't know. Like I agree with you. I think he just doesn't deserve. We can move on. I think we can move on to the rest of the players on this list because we have a lot of other things to touch on here. Do you want to move on to the AFC defense?
Sure.
Okay. Like I guess we can start on your side because I feel like you're gonna have more to say on who sticks out to you on this one, on who deserves it, who doesn't. So, is there anybody who sticks out to you?
A lot of these are I'd say I love seeing Kyle Hamilton get a spot. That feels like a great way to recognize a young player who's kind of been flying under the radar a little bit. Has gotten a lot more recognition in the later weeks, but he's been playing really well. First round pick from I think a couple years ago, has been fantastic. So it's great to see him get a spot. Jalen Ramsey is an interesting addition on there, not because he doesn't deserve it, because I think he absolutely does. I think it just speaks to how well he's been playing because he earned that spot with after missing like the entire first half of the season with an injury. So that by itself is impressive. Sauce Gardner is an interesting one. That one I might debate a little bit. That feels like a little bit of a name recognition thing just because he's not had the same season that he had when he was a rookie. But it's not to the point where I'm like I think he shouldn't deserve to be on there. It's Sauce Gardner. He's still played well. It's just not. I would maybe switch him out. I wouldn't have him as a starter like he is now. I'd switch him out for a guy like Jalen Ramsey. Other than that, like this AFC defense, it really goes to show you how talented this conference is as a whole. There's really no surprises on here, because it's like a lot of these are just like have been locked since the start of the season, right? Myles Garrett, Max Crosby, T.J. Watt, Patrick Surtain, Minka Fitzpatrick. You knew those guys were going to be on this roster, barring an injury from week 1, and they've backed it all up. So there's honestly not a lot I can talk about other than those few guys that I'm pleasantly surprised to see on there. There's no guys on there that I'm really like, oh, like they don't really deserve their spot, or I think that people have been snubbed. So that's kind of where I'm sitting at.
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree with you. Just looking at it, I think that really reigns true with this team though. Like I think it's cool to see a lot of the newer names. You pointed out Kyle Hamilton. That's a really good one. It's a good mix of young players and like players who are kind of like no shit. Yeah, of course, Miles
Yeah.
Garrett was gonna make it here. Of course, T.J. Watt was gonna make it here. I agree with you on that one. It's always nice to see a lot of these younger players get the opportunities, and I can't really think of anybody who really got snubbed. At least, not no one that sticks out to me. So I'm not mad about it at all. I don't have as much to say on this. I don't think.
Yeah, it feels like the out of all of the sides of the ball we're gonna talk about in terms of like AFC offense, NFC offense, like all that stuff. This feels like the most no brainer. Like
Yeah,
it's a pretty clear.
yeah, for sure. Well, where do you want to move here next? Do you want to go straight to NFC offense?
Sure.
Okay, let's do that. Like,
Oh boy. Okay.
yeah, this one I feel like I was gonna say because we're both Seahawks fans. I think we're both gonna have more to say on what's going on in the NFC.
Brock Purdy. Ugh. Nasty. So okay, like obviously Brock Purdy's had a fantastic season, but putting him as the best quarterback in the NFC, like I don't know. I don't know, man. I've had this debate again and again and again. Brock Purdy, I don't think is anything fantastic. I think if you put Brock Purdy on any team other than the Niners, that he's going to kind of completely crash and burn. Um, it's the Kyle Shanahan thing, right? Kyle Shanahan is a fantastic coach, and as much as I hate to admit it, probably the best in the league. I think if you put me back there, I could probably throw for like 2,000 yards just because of how great his system is and how good he is at scheming up like these freaks of nature he has back there in Debo Samuel and
Yeah,
Brandon Ayuk. So
they've
is
got
kind
so
of
many offensive
interesting.
weapons. That's for sure.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting for me. Wide receiver Pro Bowl nods are always kind of rough because there's so much talent at the position that having only 4 spots feels like you're going to be inevitably leaving someone out. Um, so I'm like, I would almost rather have a guy like Brandon Ayuk who has been having a fantastic season or Debo Samuel. A little bit less so. I'd probably put Ayuk in over Debo, but seeing Ayuk in there over a guy maybe like Mike Evans, that would be probably what I'd like to see in terms of 49er selections. Brock Purdy deserves to be in there. He's had a great season. I just don't think he deserves to be the starter. A guy like I think Dak Prescott kind of deserves that spot over him. I don't know if
Yeah.
there's anything that jumps out to you about this roster, Simon.
Well-
That's kind of what catches my eye as a Seahawks fan.
Yeah, I don't know. Nothing too crazy, I don't think. I think it's gonna be you who's gonna have a lot more to say on a lot of these. I've been hearing you pointed out the wide receiver room being a pretty competitive section of the NFC this year, and that's what I've been hearing online. A lot of people are mad about Amon-Ra St. Brown not making it over Puka Nacua, which is a conversation we kind of had before, just about how the fact that you can't really leave Puka Nacua off this roster, I don't think, especially after the season he's having. Like as of right now, this podcast should come out before they play, I believe, but he's like 30 or 40 yards off the record, which is pretty
Yeah.
bonkers. It would feel very strange, I think, to leave him off the roster. That's for sure.
He absolutely deserves to be on there. With the kind of season he's had as a guy who is technically the second receiver on the roster, like absolutely fantastic. I hate the Rams with the passion of 1,000 suns, but even I wouldn't be able to say, yeah, no, you put Amon-Ra St. Brown in there over Puka Nacua. Amon-Ra St. Brown is a great player, but there's 4 wide receivers. It's the 4 best receivers. CeeDee Lamb, absolutely. AJ Brown, absolutely. Mike Evans would be the one I'd argue, honestly. He's had a really good season, but it's a tight competition. He'd be the one who I'd be kind of pushing out there. I think Puka Nacua definitely, as a case, is the 3rd best receiver in the NFC this year. But it's tough because there's so many talented players at receiver. I think there's more talent at receiver than there is any other position in the league, quite frankly.
Yeah.
I'll have I think I have 2 more points. The rest of this feels pretty chalky. The offensive line is always like, okay, yeah, Trent Williams, Lane Johnson, Penei Sewell, cool. The rest of these guys are all pretty chalky picks, and
Yeah.
it's all like the mainstays that have been there for 10 years. Zach Martin, Jason Kelsey, no shit. Like, we know they're going to be there. I think the 2 questions I'd have for you, Simon, is one, what do you think about? I'll start with this. What do you think about the inclusion of Matthew Stafford as the third quarterback over potentially some other players? You've got Jalen Hurts, potentially. You've got Baker Mayfield as a surprise pick, or a guy like Jared Goff, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Stafford's another guy who I haven't heard a lot about this season. 24-11 on the year, not bad numbers, nearly 4,000 yards. Like, I don't know. Obviously, there's the conversation of the wide receivers he keeps churning out into incredible players. Obviously, like with the season Puka Nakua's having, obviously he has to have a pretty good quarterback thrown to him to have a season like that. But I mean, it's not bad. It's a little shocking, I guess, just because he's another. Like I said, he's another guy who I feel like I haven't heard about. Like it feels like this is the first time I've heard Matthew Stafford's name in a minute, and in that sense, it feels a little weird. But I mean, if he's having a good enough year, he's having a good enough year, right? It just comes down to that.
And I think he has. I brought it up because I do think it's one that's kind of borderline, but I agree with the decision. Like Jalen Hurts is the other big name quarterback, but he obviously, with how the Eagles have just had the bottom completely fall out on them, which isn't all Jalen Hurts' fault, but I understand why that can lead you to say he probably doesn't deserve a Pro Bowl nod at this point. Yeah, Stafford's at the point where he is just executing everything to perfection. Like he is a perfect, like one of the prettiest balls you'll see from a quarterback. Like his ball placement is excellent. Like just he looks so comfortable on that Sean McVay system at this point. It's not that surprising to me, but it's I
one
think
of those
before the
picks
season,
I guess, yeah, that's a really good way to put it, actually. Before the season, it would have felt very odd, but now it's kind of like, well, I mean...
And the competition also isn't very stiff.
That's also a very good point.
Jalen Hurts would be the only other one, but the bottom's dropped out of that whole team. That whole team is in complete free fall, so it doesn't shock me. And then Baker Mayfield is a sneaky one. Because they always have Pro Bowl like alternates, right? I don't even know if those have been announced yet, but they always have like, let's say Dak Prescott and the Cowboys go to the Super Bowl. Dak Prescott can't play in the Pro Bowl. I would love to see a guy like Baker Mayfield take a spot, because I think Baker Mayfield has had a sneakily fantastic season, and you can go back to the first episode of this podcast we've done.
That's true.
I have been a Baker Mayfield supporter since day one, and I felt like he got a bad rap, and he had like.
If you've been around since Baker Mayfield versus Kyle Trask, leave a comment.
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, like I think that he deserves his flowers a little bit, because it's another name recognition thing, right? Because I do think like a lot of these choices have been made like putting a guy like Puka Nakua in, who's literally a rookie, like it shows that voters know what they're doing, at least a little bit, in terms of actually watching the games this season and seeing who the best player actually is. But there is a name recognition thing to some of this. And Baker Mayfield's name has been not associated with good quarterback play for the last 2 or 3 years. But I think it's time for that to change, because he has been a better quarterback for the Bucs than Tom Brady was, at least in the last couple of years of his tenure. So
that's 28 touchdowns, 10 picks, almost 4,000.
He has had a better connection with Mike Evans than Tom Brady did his entire time in Tampa Bay. Yeah. If you look at Mike Evans' receiving stats, that shows up. So,
and I mean, looking at the numbers, I don't disagree. To make a case
for my guy Baker.
Yeah. I mean,
he's had a sneakily fantastic season, and remember what people were saying about this Bucs team. I saw everybody projecting, including me, frankly.
Yeah.
Even though I was a Baker believer, I didn't predict them to be doing very well. I don't think you did either, Simon. Everybody kind of wrote them off, and now they are basically they're not in the playoffs yet, but all they have to do is beat the Panthers. That's probably going to come back to bite me, and they're going to lose. But that's basically they're basically in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, like, I get what you mean.
Isn't that such a that'll be that's my case. I see them putting in Matthew Stafford over him. I'm okay with that. But if one of those 3 guys, which they probably will, one of those 3 guys goes to the Super Bowl, put Baker in.
Yep.
Just do it. That's my That's my
No,
biggest
I like
case.
those picks. I like that opinion too. Like, he's having one heck of a year. It's hard to really have anything against him at this point. Like, he really. I mean, is there anybody else you can really think of offensively who is gonna have a better shot at comeback of player of the year over Baker?
Well, the comeback player of the year was decided last December, so
I guess. I guess.
with DeMar Hamlin.
I guess. I
Also
guess.
Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco. is
Oh,
another
that's a
one
good
that
point.
could-
Yeah, Joe Flacco's another really good pick. I guess that's a very good.
But
point.
I do
He's
think
gonna have some
I do
tough
think Baker
competition, but-
Mayfield should. I do think Baker Mayfield should win that award.
Yeah.
But before we move past the offense, I do just want to say one thing about the running backs. I think they're all perfect choices. Like I'm not going to debate against any of these. CMC, DeAndre Swift, Kyron Williams. It's just really frustrating that the Seahawks haven't been good enough to let Kenneth Walker get a spot. Because I do think, honestly, Kenneth Walker, as someone who has... I don't think the stats show it this year because he's been injured and the Seahawks run blocking has been absolutely atrocious. But in terms of all of the running backs that I've seen in a Seahawks jersey, including Marshawn Lynch, he is the most talented running back that I've ever seen play for this team.
Wow.
I think just in terms of Marshawn Lynch wasn't about that kind of
He wasn't
action.
talented.
He
It
was
more
he was a bulldozer.
Yeah.
He will truck you, and he's not going to go down. But in terms of elusiveness in open space,
Well, even
and
going
just turning
into
something out of nothing.
Yeah, even going when he was entering the NFL, the comparison was Saquon. Like his whole career, it feels like people have been comparing him to Saquon a little bit, and like
I think if Kenneth Walker was in a bigger market behind a little bit better of an offensive line, he'd had that spot locked up and would be among the top 5 running backs in the league. It is a little bit upsetting how bad our run blocking this year is, just to completely overshadow him. He has been the best player on that offense in Seattle. DK Metcalf may have an argument against him, but I would have loved to see him get a Pro Bowl nod. The issue is all of those guys have just frankly put up better numbers and had better performances this year.
and he's got plenty of
But
time.
a lot of that has to do with the running back. A lot of that has to do with the run blocking that he's getting, because Seattle literally doesn't block anybody on any play, which is why I'm losing all my hair, frankly, after watching them play for this long. But
You want to move to
yeah,
defense?
that'll be my we can move on to defense. I wanted to
Okay.
give my boy K9 a shout out before we go in,
Yeah,
'cause
for sure. I mean, every time
it's-
I've watched him,
it's a little
he's
upsetting he
super
doesn't get his flowers.
athletic. Yeah. For
Yeah.
this defense, we talked a bit before. I think you had a couple things you wanted to point out. So I think
Yep.
I'll just give you the opportunity to hit on a lot of those.
Okay, so I am a Seahawks fan, if you didn't know. But that doesn't mean I want this Pro Bowl team to be full of entirely Seahawks, because I don't think that's fair. If I'm looking at this roster, I'm thinking of this Seahawks defense, and I'm thinking especially of them against Pittsburgh last week, where I saw this defense, Seahawks defense get absolutely massacred by fucking Mason Rudolph, and basically lose their playoff spot because of that, because of how bad this defense is. For this defense to have 3 Pro Bowlers, that doesn't sit right with me. Devin Witherspoon is the only one that I'm like, that is absolutely warranted, and I think he should be even ahead of Deron Bland and Charvarius Ward, who I do think are good picks. But I do think Witherspoon has played better this year. And if he hadn't gotten injured and missed these last few games, I think he would be a little bit more in that conversation. And I think that injury is probably going to prevent him from being Defensive Rookie of the Year, that hurts me on the inside. Because Devin Witherspoon has been the best player on this defense by far this season. So he's a good pick. The other 2 are where it's upsetting. Bobby Wagner is not playing at a Pro Bowl level. He is the biggest name recognition piece on this whole. Out of everything that we've gone through, Bobby Wagner is the biggest name recognition only, because he does rack up tackles still, but he is such a liability in coverage at this point because he is old and he is slow. He was never good in coverage to begin with, but he at least held up. But this time, like, we're getting picked apart over the middle because Bobby Wagner is playing 100% of the snaps and he can't cover anybody. So that feels like a little bit of an interesting placement for me. I think he's actually been one of the main problems with the Seahawks defense this year, rather than one of the things. So like if you look at that, it's like, yeah, he like, you can look at those stats that Simon just put up on the screen. Tackles, absolutely. Bobby Wagner, that's his thing. That's why he's going to the Hall of Fame, and definitely should, because he's going to rack up those tackles. As a middle linebacker, that's your main job, right? But he is such a liability in coverage this year. Even more so than he has been in the past, which is saying something, that he does not deserve to be a Pro Bowl linebacker. An article from The Score mentioned Demario Davis as somebody who could have gone in ahead of them. I absolutely could have seen that. I love Bobby. He's a Hall of Fame player. I just bought a Bobby Wagner jersey this year. I think he's fantastic. One of my favorite Seahawks players ever. So I don't say this to disrespect him, but I don't really think he deserves that spot with how he's played this year. And then the last one is Julian Love. Who is, I think it's great in terms of he's kind of a player who doesn't get a lot of recognition. I think it's frankly hilarious that Julian Love gets a nomination, because he was never intended to even start for us, because the only reason he's starting is because of how injured / bad Jamal Adams has been. So I think that's really funny that our safety we traded 2 first-round picks for is not the Pro Bowl one. But Julian Love has played really well this year and has frankly played above expectation. But I think he got a little bit buoyed by, because a lot of this is recency bias, right? That fantastic game he had against the Eagles, he was Defensive Player of the Week. That's where he got half of those 4 interceptions that you just put up on the screen. Yeah. And he's played really well. But it just feels like a little bit of an odd choice when you can put a guy in like Antoine Winfield above him. That's where I'm set, because Antoine Winfield has been fantastic for the Bucs and has played at like an all pro level this year, and that's kind of where I'm like, okay, it's not as atrocious, I think, as putting Bobby Wagner in there when he's obviously been a liability. Julian Love, I think, deserves it. I think he's played better than a lot of people realize, but he's kind of taking up a spot that should maybe go to a more deserving safety. Those are my Seahawks rants. Other than that, this roster doesn't look half bad. The Seahawks are, other than Witherspoon, are honestly kind of what stands out like a sore thumb here. I don't know if you have anything to add about this NFC defense.
No, I think you hit on it pretty well. Like you said, Bobby Wagner, a little bit of an odd pick there. I was even thinking going into this year that he would not necessarily be the kind of player we'd seen in the past for a lot of obvious reasons. He's just not as good as what he used to be, and it definitely showed this year. So it feels a little odd. I definitely agree with you. Like maybe 4 or 5 years ago, we could have had the conversation that Bobby Wagner and Fred Warner should be put on the same list. But now seeing them right next to each other feels very odd. So I don't disagree with you at all. If you do you wanna hit on special teams? Is there even a point? Most of these. Do you have any? Are you mad about?
I can't wait. I have mad hot takes about the special teams. Actually, you know what I do? Screw the people who pick the special teams. Okay, so I mean Justin Tucker, yeah, that's fair. Okay, I don't care about the AFC. NFC.
Okay.
Okay, I have 2 takes about the NFC special teams. First of all, Brandon Aubrey, fantastic. Brandon Aubrey is a fantastic kicker and is probably going... If you don't know about Brandon Aubrey yet, he is the next, like, Justin Tucker type figure in the NFL. He has not missed a single kick in his entire time in the league yet.
Wow.
So that's amazing. He is closing in on the all-time... He already has the most consecutive kicks made to start a career, and he's closing in. I think he only needs about 10 more to hit the all-time record for like a kick streak.
Oh my god.
So he is fantastic.
How long has he been in the league?
MLS player. This is his first year.
Oh, okay, that's what I thought.
he played in the USFL for the Birmingham Stallions for
Right.
2 years.
Yeah. Okay. No,
And he was a first-round pick for the MLS's Toronto FC. And then when that didn't work out, that's when he found his way to football, which makes sense. If you're a good soccer player, probably a pretty decent kicker.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
okay, that's not my special teams hot take though. My special teams hot take is Michael Dixon should be making the Pro Bowl every year. This is where my Seahawks homerism comes out. Michael Dixon is the best punter I've ever seen, and is fantastic. And it's like, I don't know who's voting in the punters. Like, I don't know. Watch the games. Like, I've watched enough Seahawks punting this year to really know how good Michael Dixon is. They punt all the damn time, so I know that Michael Dixon is a Pro Bowl punter. If I don't know. Has he made the Pro Bowl yet in his career? I don't even know. If he hasn't, he should have, because he is honestly one of the only things that keeps me sane about this team, because he routinely has just these rocket kicks that completely flip field position. Brian Anger, I don't know. I haven't heard about Brian Anger in like 10 years, buddy. Go back to I don't know what fucking punters. Anyway, that's my special teams hot take. Put Michael Dixon in the Pro Bowl every year. All this bullshit.
You
like
ready?
last year, they put like the Lions punter in. I don't care.
This is about to go nuts, Caleb. With our new fancy garbage that allows me to put stuff on the screen, we can now look at punt stats. Let's go!
Okay, let's take a look. This is Michael Dixon punting stats.
This
okay,
is Michael Dixon punting stats.
So yeah, it's like sixth best punt average. I guess that's only the thing you can look at. But look at that. Look like 70.
To be honest, can I be honest with you? He only has one thing over under 10th. Just pointed it out.
He is a watch the punters. Watch the punters. Y'all ain't grinding punter tape like I am. Get on my level.
Oh.
Michael Dixon only made the Pro Bowl in 2018 when I think he was a rookie. He should have made the Pro Bowl every year since then. He's absolutely fantastic.
Shout out to all the punters out there. That's for you.
Punters are people too, maybe. We don't know.
We're not sure. The only thing I know about punters is apparently they play a lot of ping pong, but that's
Really?
Apparently. I've heard that. Apparently there has been players who have come out whenever a kicker misses, I've heard players come out and go, they spend too much time playing ping pong. They should be practicing more.
Really?
I've heard that comment made before.
Ping pong is fantastic though. I honestly don't blame them.
Oh yeah, ping pong's the shit. I'm not very good at it, but watching people who are very good at ping pong is a very satisfying thing to do. Like it is a lot of fun.
It's even when you're not good.
There was a point where like a lot of people I knew got really into tennis, and I never understood it. If a lot of people I knew got really into ping pong, I would understand that.
It's so fun.
Yeah.
It's so fun. Yeah, ping pong is great. At my old junior high school, we had a door that would lead into like a dungeon in the basement that was filled with like 20 ping pong tables.
Oh, that's so sick.
So whenever we got to do that, that was like I was living the life.
I was gonna say that sounds awesome.
It was fantastic.
I remember
Absolutely
there was a year for Christmas, my whole family just like fucking played like a ping pong tournament, and that was our Christmas. It was the shit. But yeah,
sounds like the best Christmas you ever have. Like,
yeah. Okay. Well, next segment.
End with punters and ping pong. Fantastic segment.
Oh yeah, big time. Who doesn't love punters and ping pong?
It's the name of this podcast. So it's gonna be
Change
the name
it
of this
to punters
episode
and
today.
ping pong?
Punters and
I was gonna say
punters and ping pong? Question mark? Question mark? Question mark? All-time punters and ping pong.
I was about to say like so in the industry I work in, there is a large thing about how I took a whole class on how to talk into a microphone, just to like basically throw it out there, and how to like talk in this. And there is something that is very well known called popping your peas, where if you're really bad at it, it'll really pop up. Like if you're like, "Hi, I am popping my peas." Can you hear that? Or is my mic taking it out? Like it'll like pop in the microphone. right? I'm terrible with it, which is why I pay attention a lot to my microphone placement when I'm doing any sort of announcing. But I was just thinking, God, that title would make half of my instructors roll in their graves. Like, like holy smokes. Anyway, let's move on. We've been talking about this for 40 minutes. Punters and ping pong. There you go.
One of the biggest stories in the NFL the last couple of weeks has been how surprisingly good the Bears have been. If you look, the Bears obviously at the start of the year, not great in terms. I mean, I think I still have an unpaid debt that gets even scarier. I've really just dug myself an even further hole by having not jumped in the ocean yet, because it's now January. So for all of you that are upset that I haven't done that, for all of you that are upset,
shit, I'd forgotten about that.
It's gonna happen.
Oh my god!
I think I've honestly just made it worse for myself, frankly.
I think so. Holy smokes!
So
I wasn't even thinking about that.
That's okay.
I made like a whole graphic for that. Like our network posted it. Like that's how did nobody mention that? Like, how did we all just collect? You could have totally gotten away with it scot-free if you hadn't brought it up right now. Because I had completely forgotten about that. That is so awesome. Thank you.
I could have. I am a man. I am a man of my word, and I'm gonna do it. Like I just need to find the right time. And obviously at this
I'm
point,
making
the
this
right
a segment
time is
now.
just gonna be very.
I need
cold.
to remind the people.
Okay, yeah. That I still need to jump in the ocean. I'm going to. I'm going to. You know what?
Is it even safe to jump in
it will be
ocean in January? Like, I guess in Vancouver it's not.
Well, if I come back on the podcast at this point, then like if there's a Simon solo podcast next week, then you know how that went.
I'll just be having a podcast.
My body's
with a
floating
popsicle
into the Pacific.
Yeah. Anyway. We have a segment to do. We don't need to talk about the logistics.
The point about me bringing up the me jumping in the river was because at that point in the season, I thought the Bears were so bad that there wasn't any possible way they could beat the Commanders, which at this point of the year seems very silly of me to have said, because the Commanders are dumpster fire. But the Bears, maybe not since then, but for the last few weeks, have been pretty darn good. They've pulled off some wins against. A lot of them have been cupcakes. You've got games against the Cardinals. You've got your classic kind of bottom dwellers that they've fed on, but they've also beat up teams that are close to being in the playoffs. You've got they beat the Falcons, they beat the Lions, they beat the Vikings, narrowly lost to the Browns. Like, those are all great wins. All orchestrated by that man on the screen right now, Justin Fields. Which brings up the big dilemma, because the Bears just clinched the #1 overall pick because of Carolina's loss. And with that comes the question, what do the Bears do? Do they stick with Justin Fields, trade out of that #1 spot, potentially get an even bigger haul than they did last year, with basically essentially trading away the rights for Caleb Williams, who was one of the best QB prospects we've seen since Trevor Lawrence? Or do they trade Justin Fields, try to get something for him now, and then start over with a guy like Caleb Williams or even Drake May as your #1 quarterback? I'll leave that up to you, Simon. If you were Ryan Poles, Bears GM right now, what are you doing?
Well, Justin Fields' whole career so far has felt very up and down. And I think if you're asking what I would do in his shoes, I think it just depends on how sold you are on Caleb Williams. I think there's been a lot of conversation, especially this year, about whether he's even the best quarterback in the draft. I've seen that argument brought up once. How legit of an argument that is at this point, that's up to you. It's no secret he's been a little bit more disappointing than a lot of people were expecting. And I don't know. But you could make the same argument for Justin Fields so far in his career. Like, there's been a lot of points where everybody thinks he's going to become that elite quarterback that we even had him pegged to become at the beginning of the year, and he just doesn't do it, right? Like, it's just that type of, I don't know, right? Like, they have a situation where I'd almost argue the Bears are in the perfect situation where they can right now choose to move on from Justin Fields, who has not been incredible. He's been okay, but he hasn't been anything that necessarily screams at you franchise quarterback. So I think it just depends on how sold you are on Justin Fields and how sold you are on Caleb Williams. I think if you're looking at what people have been saying about Caleb Williams almost his entire collegiate career, I think you have to trade Fields, right? That makes more sense. But after this season, I think it's just about how, like I said, I keep hitting on it. How high are you on Caleb Williams, and is that enough for you to trade your current franchise quarterback?
Yeah, and I think that is a good place to start because I do think that's probably what's going on in the mind of Ryan Poles right now. Because it really is, you have to weigh. First of all, you have to weigh Caleb Williams versus Justin Fields. Second of all, you have to weigh Caleb Williams will be coming in as a rookie, and Justin Fields has already had 3 years to get acclimatized to the NFL and get better, which he has. So there's that part of it too. That is obviously something you have to take into consideration. But if I am the Bears GM right now, I also want to think about the return that I can get. Because this Bryce Young trade that the Panthers made, I think has rejuvenated that Bears organization. You get DJ Moore, and you get the first overall pick. So you're right, in terms of it is a win-win. Because either way, they're going to be getting something fantastic out of a trade for a quarterback that it's too early to call him a bust, but has not looked great in that Carolina offense. So, if the question is, what would I do? I am firmly on the side of you keep Justin Fields for a couple reasons. I think, first of all, this is not a knock against Caleb Williams. Like, I do think it's a fair point that you make in terms of evaluating Caleb Williams in terms of how good you think he actually is. I think he's fantastic. I think he is by far the best quarterback in the draft.
Do you think he's the best Caleb to ever throw a football?
Well, that's something that can be debated. I like to stick up for myself a little bit. Frankly, if I had,
you're saying if you had his line and receivers.
Yeah, exactly. If I had the scholarship, like frankly, I don't know. If I was in the States where they could have discovered my talent,
I was gonna say unknown Albertan talent.
Exactly.
God, straight out of the backyard football league.
Yeah, like, come on. The name Peterson would be emblazoned on the back of a Bears jersey right now. They'd already be selling it in the shops. But he's a pretty good substitute for what we can get. He's a decent. True. Caleb represent. At least he spells it right. If he spelled it with a K, he would be my worst enemy, and I'd hope he goes undrafted. But he spells it with a C, so he's cool, and I'm okay with it.
That has to be a European
with him being the
thing.
-- 1 pick.
The Caleb with a K.
Spelling it with a K. I don't even know. People who have Caleb with a K are weird. If you are Caleb with a K, stop watching the podcast. We don't want you here.
Okay, buddy.
I'm just kidding.
Let's calm the Jets a little bit.
I'm just kidding. Caleb's with a K. You're welcome here. I just hold a little bit of a grudge. Anyways, that's not the topic at hand. I do think you keep Justin Fields, and I don't think it's not because I don't like Caleb Williams as a prospect. I think he's fantastic. However, I think everybody knows that he's fantastic, and I think the haul that you can get for that number 1 pick is going to be something unlike we've ever seen. Because for these top draft picks, you have to overpay, right? We saw it last year with Carolina. Carolina gave up their first-round pick because the Bears just moved down to pick 9, right? They only drop 8 spots, but they also get DJ Moore, a bona fide number 1 wide receiver, and their first-round pick next year, which turned into number 1. And that is for Bryce Young, who is a worse prospect than Caleb Williams is. Can you imagine what you're going to get for Caleb Williams?
Yeah,
that
is
kind
really
of
the
haul
conversation.
Is going to be astronomical, and I don't think because we haven't really reached draft season hype yet. Because these guys, like Caleb Williams, is going to be talked up significantly more once we don't have actual football to watch. People are going to start watching the tape and realize, if they don't already, which they do, how fantastic he is. Because he is the kind of like Trevor Lawrence generational prospect that we've seen. Bryce Young simply isn't on the same level. I think just because of that haul you can get for Caleb Williams and how you can continue to kind of push that draft pick into the future. Like, imagine if you give that draft pick up. Like, I think here's the ideal situation. You trade down to 3 with the Patriots, get their first round pick next year, maybe throw in another player.
Caleb, you're breaking my heart.
Then
you can't
I know,
give
it's
the
not
Pats Caleb Williams. They can't keep getting away with it.
Simon, I don't think you know how realistic it is that's probably what's going to happen.
I'm sure. There's been talks about that for 2 years, buddy.
Yep. Because I mean, even if you look at the at how the draft is kind of playing out, because you got Bears, because the Bears are the reason I say they want to trade down to 3 is because I don't think you want to miss out on Marvin Harrison. That's the one receiver that I think you really have to get to pair with Fields if you want to build around him. So you've got that. I think if you trade down any further past 3, you're not going to get Marvin Harrison. I think that's the thing. But even then, getting a guy like Marvin Harrison at 3, a first-round pick next year, and then maybe another couple picks and another player, another fantastic haul. And the Patriots will still, probably because of how atrocious that team is, other than their defense, will probably still be a top 5 pick next year. Then the Bears are just like, that's so much better than trying to draft Caleb Williams and use that pick now. Even if he does become the superstar that he probably will be, Justin Fields, I think, is on that cusp right now. So I think that's probably the best move for your team, and I think that's probably what they'll do.
Yeah. Well, and at the very least, if he does go to the Patriots, Bill Belichick won't be there. Like, I don't know if that's a little bit better. Like, God, that's really interesting, though. That's a very good point. Like, I'm curious on how accurate that is to how the Bears feel in their own facilities. Like, how sold do you think they actually are on Justin Fields? Like, because there has to be the conversation that they've been getting is that they're looking to get a second or a third round pick, or at least that's what the market is for Justin Fields. I wonder, like, how much do you think that's got to weigh into this decision too? Like, what can you actually get for Fields, right? Like, do you want to give up a guy like Fields when you're only going to get a second round pick out of it, and when you can get a lot more for trading away that Caleb Williams pick? Like, how much does that come into effect in this conversation?
Yeah, because I think if you're the Bears and you're playing it smart, you want to play the odds. So if you just look at it in terms of straight up what you're going to get, the one route, you get Caleb Williams and, let's say, at best, a second round pick. Okay, Caleb Williams will probably be fantastic, but he could also flame out. Any quarterback can. Versus you keep Justin Fields, who I think has more value than a second round pick. You keep Justin Fields, you draft, and you essentially just give yourself more cracks at the can, right?
Yeah.
Marvin Harrison, all these draft picks can flame out, right? But Marvin Harrison is a pretty sure thing. That even if he doesn't work out, then you have your next year's first round pick that you've now gotten in this trade. Like, it just kind of pushes things further down the road in terms of we want to have the most shots that we can to get blue chip players. And I think Justin Fields is a blue chip player. And I think Caleb Williams has higher potential than he is. Caleb Williams is a better prospect than Justin Fields ever was. But you can't say that Justin Fields isn't playing at a level where he has that superstar potential in him. Because there's just 1 or 2 or 3 things that he does every game that make you just say, this guy's special. And there's some things that need to be worked out. He holds onto the ball too long, all that. But all of that can be worked out with better supporting cast, with just training in that over the offseason. He's gotten better each year he's played. And so if I'm looking at the Bears and I'm looking at that return, like you said, like a second round pick, I'm weighing my options, and that's why I eventually go with Justin Fields. But to your point, we don't know what kind of evaluation they have in your room. Maybe they don't. Maybe they don't see him as a superstar.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like, but you gotta wonder if, like you said, at times he's really shining. You gotta think in the back of their heads, like, what if we draft this Caleb Williams guy, and he sucks? Like, obviously, he looks like a sure thing of a prospect, but that's been said before. Like, what if you draft Caleb Williams and he's just bad? He doesn't translate to the NFL, and then you trade Fields to, let's say in this scenario, he goes to the Patriots, right? Let's just like throw out a team like that.
Or he goes to the Seahawks.
Or he goes to the Seahawks, right? Like, let's say he goes somewhere like that, and he just excels. Like, and he just like turns into that quarterback that the Bears were thinking that he would be when they drafted him. And all of a sudden, the Bears look stupid as hell, like, and just caught going like, well, now our quarterback is this Caleb Williams guy who suddenly forgot how to throw a football. Like, you got to wonder if maybe that's the conversation in that room. Like, you got to weigh the risks and rewards. Do you really think Caleb Williams is going to be this generational talent, and do you really think Justin Fields is going to pan out? Because if you think Caleb Williams is the next Patrick Mahomes, and you don't think that Fields is that guy, or at least he's not going to be as good, trade away Fields, right? But it's just, I think it totally just comes down to what your expectations for Williams are at that next level. Do you really think that he can be the thing that takes over the NFL for the next 10 years, 20 years?
Yep. And yeah, I mean, if you're the Bears, because you make a great point, because like painting that scenario of trading Fields somewhere else and he's fantastic and Williams sucks, that's a real possibility.
Yeah.
Especially for the Bears.
Think about it like this. You pointed out Bryce Young. Like, a lot of people thought that he would be the most, like, or at the very least, out of all these rookie quarterbacks that came in and started this year, he would be the one with the best chance to exceed at that next level. And so far, it's almost been the opposite.
Yep.
Almost every single rookie
he was
who
the most
started
pro-ready.
Yeah, exactly. But, like, almost every single other rookie, when they've been on the field, has outplayed him. And I think that totally just shows the risks here, and why I almost, after having this conversation, I'm almost leaning towards where you are. Like, maybe you don't want to take that risk.
Yeah. But the Bears have to be Bears fans. Honestly, like you said, it's a win-win. It's only good things. Like, it's a very great situation to be in and a great way to reboot a franchise. But if you're Bears fans with the history of quarterbacks that they have, you have to be scared shitless. I saw an Instagram comment on some sort of random post about this the other day that I think summed it up pretty much perfectly. And there's really no right decisions, but you can be sure that the Bears will make the wrong one. And like for Bears fans, that has to be terrifying, right? Because you can just so easily see that happening, where either they trade away the Caleb Williams pick and he becomes the next second coming of Mahomes, and the Bears are just like left wondering what if again. Because I believe it was the Trubisky draft that Mahomes was in.
Yes.
Where they passed up on Mahomes to get Trubisky.
You're right on that.
So they could be left with that situation again, which would just be heartbreaking. Or you can trade away Fields, who you already had in the building for 3 years, and he becomes the next superstar quarterback. It's just it's a good conundrum, but it's still a conundrum. Which is it's
the same thing that we see in the NHL all the time with the goalie conversation, right? Where like Boston's had it for the last 2 years, they've managed to juggle it, but that's going to come to head soon between Swayman and Allmark. It's just one of those things where you got two guys who are both very, very good and good enough to be that top guy, but you don't want to get rid of one, right?
Yep, because you can only have one on the ice or on the field at the same time, right?
Yeah, I almost wonder if it's smarter if you're the Bears to just wait and draft Williams, and then once you have both in your training camp or both in the system, you can just decide at that point. Like, that's just me spitballing. I don't know if that would actually be smarter.
Yeah,
but
I did have that same thought, and it would be interesting, but I do think that takes away some of the because I did have that same thought. And I was kind of playing through that in my head. But I think the one issue with doing that is you kind of tank his Williams' trade value. The most you're going to get out of Caleb Williams is if you trade him before he's even drafted. Because let's say you bring him into your room and you think, oh, Fields is looking great. Williams isn't looking as good. Let's trade him. What message does that send to other teams? Right? We don't want this guy anymore.
Yeah, I guess.
We've seen him in a room and he's not great. How many teams are going to want to pay the same ransom that they would have otherwise paid for him? That's the conundrum. That's the
Yeah.
conundrum.
And I think it just, yeah. Like, there's so many options here. The Bears are totally just they're put in such a bad spot that I'm really interested to see where they're going to end up going with it, I guess. We're just going to have to see.
Yep. It's a good conundrum to have, but it's still a conundrum.
Yeah.
Of course, like, the Bears are probably going to make the wrong move, and whatever happens, either way, they're probably going to make the wrong decision. But for those fans, I hope not.
Yeah. And for the next segment, we're going to continue with the football. This is a football heavy podcast. Who could have saw that one coming from us? That's a big shocker. We got NCAA coming up next. All right. So, continuing down the football road, we had the semifinals this weekend for college football playoffs between Washington and Texas and Michigan and Alabama, with Michigan and Washington coming out on top. I was not able to watch either of the games, but I know, Caleb, you were able to catch both of them, and you said that it was quite the game on both sides, from what I heard. So, what do you got? What do you think of it?
It was some of the best football period that I've seen in the last little while. After watching, especially going into this year, like watching a lot more college football than I ever thought I would, getting really into the story of this Washington team in particular, like going from watching the Seahawks just completely die on the field against the Steelers to the next day being able to watch this Washington team look like such a great, well-oiled machine, and these games just feeling like there's so much behind them, like they're so important, and being able to go and watch these teams who have never played each other, like the like Washington's never going to play Texas in a season normally, to just see these kind of like heavyweight juggernaut matchups come to fruition was fantastic, and we kind of avoided what we normally see in college football, where one team is in these semifinals. One of the big issues has been that a lot of the times one of the teams is a true powerhouse and the other one's just kind of snuck in on an easy schedule and they get like blown away 63-7. That was not the case today. I'll kind of go in, and another point to say about these matchups, it's the last time we'll see this format, in terms of having only the top 4 teams make it. And we talked about this a little bit in our Florida State episode, or our Florida State segment. But they're going to expand to 12 next year, which I think will be great. But this was certainly a good way for the 4-team playoff to work out, because both of these games were fantastic. I'll let you chime in, Simon, before we get into the actual games.
Yeah.
What do you think about that expansion into the 12-team format versus just having the 4? Do you think that's something that will be of benefit to college football?
Well,
Even
again,
just from like an outsider perspective.
Yeah, I feel like a broken record in this, where I just feel like, why wasn't it that from the start? Right? Like, it's just, it feels very strange that you'd limit, and I again, broken record, I said the same thing. Why would you limit the games that are bringing in the most profit? Like, these are the games that people just go nuts for. Like, everybody's going to be watching on TV. Everybody's going to be going crazy for it. And you are limiting it to 4 games or 4 teams. Like, why? You're just wasting money. Like, you're not really maximizing, even if you're just looking at it from a business side, you're not maximizing profits, and you sure as hell aren't, like, just doing the best by your fans. Because, I mean, this 12-game thing is going to, like we mentioned, allow for a lot more teams to make the playoffs and allow for upsets, allow for a lot more situations that I think a lot of people are going to be really looking ahead to. And I think it's great. While, like you said, this is a good way to end the 4-game, or the 4-team. Jesus. Like, this is a good way to end it, but it shouldn't have been a thing from the start, is kind of what I'd hit on right away.
Yeah. And I completely agree. And I think it also solves a lot of the issues that we've been seeing, like getting more into college football. I'm seeing all of these other bowl games that don't really matter that are being played with all the teams that didn't make the playoffs. And all of the star players are sitting, and like the quarterbacks are like transferring before they even finish the season because they know the bowl games don't really matter for anything. This is going to open it up to where those top teams can actually compete at their fullest strength. Because otherwise you get games like Georgia-Florida State, where Georgia wins by 63 because Florida State's playing their 3rd-string quarterback, or Ohio State Missouri game where Ohio State is playing their third string quarterback because their regular guy transferred to Syracuse before the bowl game. So I think that will solve a lot of that. Getting into the games. I'll do like a quick little recap of them. So Michigan, Alabama, first of all, fantastic. The first Rose Bowl that I've ever watched. That just seeing that kind of atmosphere in that stadium, absolutely packed in there as the sun kind of goes down. It felt like this huge event. And so especially with Alabama, even as a casual college football watcher, you know Alabama, right? Like they're the ones that win literally every year because Nick Saban has done such a great job of building that program. But Michigan, obviously ranked number one. Alabama hasn't had that same kind of season. And coming into it, it looked like Michigan was the better team. It's just that Michigan's special teams was atrocious. Michigan muffs a punt to begin the game, gives Alabama an easy first touchdown. Michigan answers back, but then they have a bunch of miscues. They miss an extra point to bring it to 13-7 instead of 14-7. Just a bunch of little mistakes that keep Alabama in the game because Alabama's offense was absolutely terrible for most of the first half because their offensive line just couldn't get anything going. But after that, in the second half, they came out looking like a completely different team. They were able to actually take the lead before J.J. McCarthy and the Wolverines had this incredible drive to go and tie it. A pass that tipped off, and I've never seen this before. It tipped off an Alabama defender's finger, but it kept the spiral going. So all that it did was just deflect the pass higher. But the spiral is still there, was still on target, but the Michigan receiver has to make this incredible leaping acrobatic catch to keep the drive alive. One of the best connections I've seen in any football game in recent memory. Absolutely incredible. Comes down to overtime, and maybe this is where I'll get you to chime in, Simon, because
I like how I just get to be the kid in the
game,
back who occasionally raises his hand. This is fun. I get to just ride the bench for this one.
Oh yeah, no, this is fun. I like yapping my mouth off about football, so this is great for me too. But obviously this game goes to overtime, and I don't know. Do you know how the college football overtime works, Simon?
Oh.
If you know how the CFL overtime works, then it's the same thing.
Okay, then yes. Because I was going to say it's the same as the CFL, where I know it lightly, but every time it comes up, like every time it happens in a game I'm watching, I learn again. It's that type of thing, right? Where it's just like,
yeah.
So I've kind of forgot, but I definitely did know at some point.
Yeah. So it's each team gets the ball. Each team is guaranteed the ball, which is not so in the NFL unless it's in the playoffs. Each team gets the ball from the 25-yard line, and it's basically a shootout. So if you score, then the other team gets the ball and has a chance to match. And then if the other team either like kicks a field goal or doesn't score a touchdown, the other team has an opportunity to go down and beat that score to win. That's all that is. And you just go back and forth until there's an eventual winner.
Okay.
Versus the NFL, where it's literally if you score a touchdown, you win, basically. And honestly, just watching this game, it's just so refreshing to see that kind of an overtime system instead of the terrible NFL one.
And people have been
mad
at the NFL one for a while, right? Like that's not new.
Yeah, it's not. It's really like seeing a system. It's a system that works, and I don't know why they haven't adopted it. So in this game, Michigan gets the ball first. They go down and score. Alabama, they get down to about the 5, and they can't punch it in. Can you, Simon? Someone who didn't watch the game, it's 4th and 3.
Yeah.
4th and goal from the 3-yard line. Alabama, this is the game, right? Because Michigan's already scored a touchdown. Alabama needs a touchdown to keep the game going. What play do you think Alabama runs from the 3-yard line, 4th and goal?
I'm not sure. That's a good question. I think the obvious choice, because this is the conversation it feels like we have every time this happens because of a certain team that did a very similar thing. I think they probably passed it.
Nope, they did not.
Oh,
they did not
actually ran it. I was gonna say because that's
They
where I
ran
felt
the
like you
ball.
were going with it.
Can you guess which player they ran the ball with, though?
Oh, wow.
Not their running back.
I was about to say. I don't. If you're asking for a name, I don't know if I can properly give you one. I'm not a big college football guy. But...
If you give me a position, what?
Did they run it with like a defensive tackle or some shit? Like.
Nope. They pulled a quarterback dive. There you go. You pulled up the player on the screen. Jalen Milroe. That's who they decided. Jalen Milroe, obviously very athletic quarterback. Like he's a great runner of the football, but pulling a quarterback dive on quarterback draw on 4th and 3, terrible play call to end the game.
That's a lot of yards to get like against some defensive linemen. That's rough. Like I'd understand it if you
especially when the Michigan
believe...
defensive line is so good.
Yeah, that and like. You see, when Cam Newton was still in the NFL, for example, you'd see that every once in a while, where it's this guy who legitimately could have you could have made the argument that actually makes sense to do, but like I don't know much about Alabama's quarterback in this situation, but I'm assuming he's not Cam Newton, just like wild shot in the dark. I would argue
he's not. He's a good runner, but he's no Cam Newton.
Yeah, like yeah, it seems a little odd to me. That's for sure.
It's also that Alabama's offensive line had been terrible. Like they're not that matchup is not one that they're looking to exploit. Michigan I think had 5 sacks in the first half, if that gives you any perspective on it.
Jesus.
But yeah, that's how Alabama finally gets out of the playoff, and thank goodness, honestly, because I would not have liked to see another Alabama college football championship. That's just not fun. We'll move on to the Washington-Texas game, which was fantastic. Another great game. So this one kind of went back and forth. Washington, their big thing is their offense. So they had Michael Penix Jr., who I think I don't know if he will be, but he should be a first-round pick next year. Roma Dunze, his number 1 receiver, should also be a first-round pick next year. Absolutely just killing it. Michael Penix has one of the most accurate deep balls. It reminds me a little bit of Russell Wilson, like just with how accurate he is on some of those moonshots that he has. I don't know if that's just the Seahawks fan in me talking, but it's absolutely incredible to watch. So they kind of went back and forth. Washington had similar special teams mistakes that Michigan did, with another muffed punt, which was happening all day in both games, giving Texas the opportunity to tie them up at 7. They kind of shoot out back and forth. It's 21-21 at the half, and then it ends up being this weird kind of tale of two quarters things. Washington goes up. By the end of the third quarter, they're up 34-21. And at that point, you're kind of thinking they've taken all of the momentum. I think the yards gained in the third quarter for two teams, Washington had like 160 and Texas had about 7. If that kind of gives you a snapshot of how badly Washington outplayed Texas in the third quarter. But Texas claws their way back. But they get their way within 9. And they have this long drive. They try to get in for a touchdown, but they get stopped. They have to go for a field goal with about 1:15 seconds left. And just because this is kind of fun, just to see how in context how dumb some of these decisions made by coaches are. Let's pull the Ask Simon in terms of if you're Washington,
true offensive coordinator of us all.
Yes.
Or is this offense or defense?
This is offense. This is offense. So
Okay.
you're looking at. So you're Washington.
Yeah.
You're up 6. There's 1:12 seconds left in the game. Texas has 2 timeouts. What do you do?
So Texas is up
Texas
by 6.
only has.
They only have 6.
No, Washington is up
Washington
by 6.
is 6.
Washington
Okay.
is up by 6.
What down am I on?
Washington is up by 6.
Or is this like what I do
First
for
down.
an entire drive?
This is what do you do for an entire drive? First down, 1:12 seconds left. Texas only has 2 timeouts to stop the clock.
All right, I'll alley-oop you, son of a bitch. I'll run the ball.
Okay, that is what they did, but
Okay.
even a better scenario would be to kneel.
Oh, that too.
Because
Yeah.
Texas only has 2 timeouts.
Fair point.
But Simon, let's follow normally your strategy would be a good one too, because running the ball is relatively low risk, right? Unless this happens. So Washington runs it on first down, Texas takes a timeout. Runs it on second down, Texas takes a timeout. Then they run it again on third down, and Texas can't take a timeout. So it's the clock's winding down. They would only have maybe about 15 to 20 seconds left to go the entire field and score a touchdown. Pretty unlikely. However, because the Washington offensive coordinator followed your advice and ran the ball, he got the Washington running back, who had already been injured previously in the game, got injured again, which caused Washington to need to use an injury timeout to stop the clock and
sucks.
give Texas the ball with 50 seconds left instead of 20. And with that, Texas goes all the way down the field and gets to the 10-yard line with 10 seconds left. And they get a free 4 shots at the end zone from the 10-yard line, basically. And by some miracle, Washington is able to stop them. A couple bad throws, an almost sack that he has to throw out of, and then a fantastic play in the end zone that was kind of reminiscent of, the classic Richard Sherman tip in the corner of the end zone. It's just a one-on-one, cornerback bats the ball away, Washington somehow comes out on top. It was one of those games, it's like, if Washington had lost that game, like, I don't know, just the fact that they would have won that game very easily if their own player didn't get injured. That kind of stung. Even though they did end up winning the game, as they well should have, they were the better team. Just even the fact that that's a possibility, like that was kind of, it put a lot more suspense in the game than there probably should have been. But it led to a very interesting ending. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about that one. It's just like the fact that that's even a rule, that you have to use an injury timeout there, even when the clock would have clearly run down to 20 seconds. That part doesn't quite sit right with me.
Yeah, and that is interesting, I guess. Like, it's, I don't know. I do agree with you. But I think this opens up a good point to end on, I think. If you had to pick, national championship has now been decided. You know who's going to be playing in it. Who do you got, Washington or Michigan?
Well, I'm a very biased observer here, because obviously I'm going to be cheering hard for Washington. Like, they've had such a great season. I think it'll be tough. Obviously Michigan is a fantastic team. I think Washington will come out on top, just because I think their defense has been much improved, and I think in these close games, Washington just has so much experience winning in the clutch. Like, they've done it all year, all season. They've had so many close games that they've had to pull out of, and I think they've had lots of great competition in the Pac-12, more than they normally do. So if I'm picking a game, I think it's going to be very close. I wouldn't be shocked if this one goes to overtime, but I think Washington pulls it out by a touchdown or so. It's going to be a high-scoring game. I think the biggest matchup is, if it's a high-scoring game, Washington wins. If it's a low-scoring game, that means Michigan wins, because it's really all about Washington's offense versus Michigan's defense. I think Washington's offense is able to run up the score a little bit. I'm going to say it's like a 38-35 Washington win.
Okay.
At least I hope so.
Yeah, I don't have a prediction. I don't know enough about both teams. So I'll just agree with yours. Wow, Caleb, that sounds awfully smart. I'm going to say the same thing, because I did my research and definitely 100% know what I'm talking about, and think Washington is also going to win. Wow, who could have saw that one coming? And from the same score. God.
Or you could keep the same score and then just say
That's
Michigan
an
will win, so that you can make me look like an idiot.
Michigan beats Washington 38-0. Clock it in.
Wow. Okay.
Yep. Bet your money on him.
We'll see who's right.
We'll see who's right.
Knowing how this kind of thing works, it's probably going to be you.
Oh, it always is.
Yeah.
After all, my college football knowledge will forever beat yours every time, 100% of the time, because I know everything about everything, and you should follow my betting page, because which I definitely have, by the way. I was actually told by a relative, I think I told you this, Caleb. I was told by a relative who has been watching a couple episodes. Jordan, if you somehow made it this far into another episode, thank you for watching. But I'm gonna bring this up anyway. Jordan, my cousin Jordan told me that we should do some betting stuff on here. We gotta turn it into a betting podcast. And I just told him that neither me nor Caleb know anything about betting. So I think it would just be really funny. I think that we should add a new segment to the end of every podcast where we give our picks, but we got to keep a stat on how many we get wrong to really show. Like, we'll just like be where me and you are just super super confident. Like, pick this, become a millionaire type thing. Where we get, and then we'll just have a stat at the bottom of the screen where it shows like what me and you are. Where it'll be like, I've hit on like 2 out of 36, and you've hit on like 3 out of 47. You know what I mean? Like, just have that kind of stat at the bottom and just be super overconfident about it. I think that would be an incredible idea for a segment.
Our goal is to just be the worst betting podcast.
That's what I mean.
Possibly.
That's what I mean. Like, comically bad. Where like Caleb. You know what my prediction?
We're gonna be
Put Will Levis over 450 yards, become a millionaire right now. It'll happen. I know a lot about how betting works.
I mean, I think we're gonna become the Armand White of betting. If you don't know who that is, look him up. But that's basically the idea is that anything that is bad is good, and anything that is good is bad. So if we pick something, you have the easiest money in your life because you just run to the opposite of whatever we say.
That's a very good point.
Because it's true. Like, even if you're 2 out of 36 and I'm 3 out of 47. That means you have about like a 90% hit rate if you just bet the opposite of what we tell you every single time.
That's a very good point.
That means we're actually the best betting.
I was gonna say, holy, we'd be making people a lot of money, huh?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's like the Drake bet. That's what we are. We're like betting against. So when you're trying to figure out who you should bet for, first you look at who Drake dropped $1 million on, and then you look at me and Caleb's picks. And then you'd make money.
And if they line up, if they line up,
oh Drake, God, put the house.
Slam the opposite.
Yeah, put the house.
Bet your entire mortgage. Yeah.
God, bet your kids. Like, seriously, like what's the worst that could happen? Me being right?
Seriously.
Holy smokes, no.
Never gonna happen.
Never gonna happen. That's what we got to start doing. We got to start doing a money line at the end of each podcast. Me and you both make our money lines for the week, just to see how bad we are at it. Because I've done this in my own head where like I'll watch a UFC event, right, and I'll think, wow, I feel like I got all of those fights right, and then I'll like the next time I'll like count it, like I'll write down my predictions and then count it in my head, and I'll go like 1 for 6, and I'll be like, oh, maybe I should be a better. That's pretty much how it goes. But yeah.
Oh yeah.
Tune in next time to the Trick Play Betting Podcast. It'll happen.
Oh, it definitely will.
Oh yeah, big time.
So it is apparently a trend to release your All-Star Game rosters this week. We talked about this is really an All-Star centric podcast. We talked about the Pro Bowl, and now we're going to talk about the NHL All-Star Game because they just revealed not the full selection of players. We're going to do another to tease it out a little bit to keep you coming back for more. We're gonna do our own little version of the All-Star Draft once the additional fan voted players are in, so we have the full roster. But the NHL did reveal their first 32 selections, one from every team. So we've got that full list of picks. So basically, who people think so it's the League's Department of Hockey Ops. Who they think the best player on essentially every single team is. So, obviously something pretty interesting, and I'll leave that up with you, Simon.
I was going to ask on how you wanted to necessarily go through this, because we have there's a couple different ways we can kill this pig.
I mean, we can do it in a similar way we did the Pro Bowl in terms of just going east and then west and talking about any picks we find interesting, controversial.
Well, the main difference with the NHL is it's not East and West, right? So there's 4 divisions. So I feel like we could do that. We could just break it down by division.
Okay, I might have to find the list that I have is
Well,
just East and West. I might.
okay. Well, I can. The beautiful thing about this incredible. Wow, are you ready for this? Where do we want to start? Do you think?
Oh, well,
You ready to see this fancy
in
thing
terms
that I
of
can do?
division.
Yeah, probably.
Oh, I'm so ready. Let's pull up the Pacific. Why not? You
Okay.
don't want to bury the lead. I know you've got an Elias Lindholm rant sitting on
I
there.
do
Like-
have an Elias Lindholm rant that I'm ready to go on. I already went on it once today. Shout out to Anand on his podcast. He may or may not be coming on next week to talk with us. Anyway,
Whoa,
Pacific Division. We're throwing
we're
everything
really
out.
like keeping you coming.
Oh yeah, we're
Yeah.
throwing it all out. We're gonna have our first guest next week. I was gonna wait till the end to announce that, but it's gonna be fun. Anyway, here's our Pacific Division. I kind of cut it off at the end, but that's all right. Anyway, our names are Frank Vetrano, I believe is how you pronounce it. Elias Lindholm, Connor McDavid, Cam Talbot, Tomas Hertl, Oliver Bjorkstrand, Quinn Hughes, and Jack Eichel. And for anybody who is unfamiliar, in the NHL, one player needs to be selected from each team. So there are still about 12 spots that are left to be filled by the fan vote, but these are the players that were selected to represent their teams officially. So we're going to just go down each of them and just figure out which kind of makes sense, which don't. Caleb, if you need time to get your research and see if you have any of these that you're pissed about, I have one that I can say that I'm not necessarily happy about, and that's the Elias Lindholm pick. I said, I already spoke on it. I don't think it's the right pick. I think there's a lot of players on this Flames team that have had an excellent season, and it feels like a very strange one to give it to Lindholm. He's been very, very good for the Flames at certain points in his career. Like, he's had a number of seasons over a point per game and didn't get the All-Star vote. So it feels very weird to reward him now just because we don't... Our top scorers aren't necessarily big names. I'm talking about Blake Coleman. Nazem Kadri is the one right under him, who is a bigger name, but for some reason didn't get picked in this case. And even below that, you could talk about Mackenzie Weegar. You could talk about... There's just a lot of other picks on this Flame squad that people are mad that they didn't make. And I think the big one to me that sticks out is Coleman. I think that if anybody deserved it this year, it probably was Coleman. With how good he's been on both sides of the puck, this is the type of year where he's not going to have better. Lindholm is going to have much better seasons in the rest of his career. But Coleman is having a career year right now. He's having the best season he's ever had as a Flame. And if you were ever going to reward him with an all-star pick, this would be the year to do it. And it really sucks to me to see him get his spot taken away by a player who's having a down year. It just feels odd. Moving through the rest of the list, most of them make fairly good sense to me. The one slightly off pick, if you want to just go by like star value, would be Frank Vetrano. Like I said,
that was the one I was gonna jump on there. Like,
okay,
if you want to your point about Lindholm, like I completely agree. And I think giving it to a guy like Coleman, who's actually been having the better season, feels a lot better. Because it's the same argument we had about the Pro Bowl, where it's very much a name value pick. The one thing I would say, that if you're a Flames fan, you can look at this and spin it positively, is maybe say, does that increase a little Elias Lindholm trade value potentially?
And that has been
like
the conversation that has been had, where it's almost like, I wonder if the Flames wanted him to go just so that to up the trade value a little bit, but it's... I don't know. Even that feels odd. I feel like he's getting the pick because he's the biggest name, and sending Coleman just isn't as sexy.
Yeah, I think so too. But you do wonder how much say, because it's kind of like a shadow council type pick, right? In terms of how they actually make these decisions. How much, like, I wonder if the Flames higher ups can kind of like poke and prod them a little bit to be like, not even just like saying like, hey, pick Lindholm.
That feels
like.
Well, and the one thing that I read once that is exactly what you said, where it's almost like you got to wonder if maybe this is just Craig Conroy's way of being able to advertise that he has a all-star on the market, right? Like, it's just that type of thing where it's just, which I don't know, it feels very odd to me to really be making, because I don't understand how they would even, I don't understand how these players are picked, I guess. Like, is it?
Yes, and I think.
Like,
I
is
mean, it
it
just says it's the Department of Hockey Ops, so it's like it's just
that can be
it
pretty up in
literally
the
is
air.
kind of just a
God,
council basically, right? Like,
trick play conspiracy theories out here. We're getting real into
yeah,
it. Oh yeah. But yeah, other than that,
but
like you were gonna point out Frank Vetrano, where to my knowledge, I don't know a lot about this Ducks roster. I know Zegras was having a down year. I know they don't really have a lot of other star talent other than Zegras that would really
I
like
mean,
stick out to
the
you.
biggest one that I would almost sub out just in terms of like young star talent would be a guy like Mason McTavish,
Yeah,
who's
yeah,
having a pretty
exactly.
decent year and has pretty. Bertrano has surprisingly decent stats for what I would expect. Not like I've been grinding Ducks tape, but
Yeah,
a guy like Mason McTavish has a higher like points per game number. Like, so you kind of look at that and think if there's anybody to represent the Ducks, like he may be a better choice, even if Vetrano technically has more points. Um, but one of the things that the Frank Vetrano and Elias Lindholm picks kind of bring up to me, and my biggest kind of thing about this whole All Star selection is, I think the NHL is just stupid for making sure every team has a representative. I don't think
yeah.
that's the right way to do it.
No, I don't think
You
that's
are
even a conversation. I agree with you. I think it's very stupid. I think
I don't
ever
know.
since they implemented it, it's been a really, really crappy change. Because I understand the reasoning behind it when they first put it in was that it would up viewership for the All Star game because each team would have somebody for their respective fan base to cheer on. Right? It's that argument. But and maybe that's the
Yeah.
case. I don't know the stats for that. Maybe that is bringing in more people. If it's not, you're just taking away. It's like, it, are you telling me Frank
Because at this
Vetrano should be picked as a starter over like Leon Draisaitl or like another one of those big names
Yeah.
where like it just feels weird to not read them on this list. Like it's weird because the Pacific does it. Like you're telling me Frank Vetrano, I'm crapping on him, but like, are you telling me that's a bigger All
or even
Star?
like
Like it's
and that brings up it's not even like yeah because it is him stealing spots from guys like Draisaitl or even like if you look at Vancouver where it's like just like how McDavid is a deserving obviously deserving for the Oilers, it's like Quinn Hughes is deserving for the Canucks too. He's had a fantastic season, but it also feels wrong to leave a guy like Elias Pettersson off the list.
yeah, no, exactly.
Where it
I
feels
think,
like if you're
and
actually
that's
making a
that.
Pacific Division All-Star team, you
Yeah,
leave off Vetrano and Lindholm and you put in Pedersen and Draisaitl. Like, it's
that
just
is
such
the
a
funny thing though.
no-brainer that's
Like
hampered by this system.
yeah, and it sucks. I think it really sucks. Because we're not seeing the best of the best. It allows in some situations it allows for players, for example, like I'm sure Bedard would have made it in anyway, but that's one that stuck out to me where like he became the youngest All Star this year, but it's almost like I could see him potentially being close to being near the cut if they let everybody from, for example, Colorado jump on that horse, right? Like
Yeah.
it's one of those things where it's just I don't know. It feels kind of weird. It's working out for the NHL in picks like that, where like a young rookie they're able to advertise it. Where I'm sure we're gonna see tons of photos of Connor Bedard chatting it up with Connor McDavid and Sidney Crosby, but
Yeah.
and that's great for the NHL's branding and all that. But it's unfortunate a little bit. I mean, like Leon Draisaitl, Cale Makar, all those guys are still gonna make it through the fan vote, but it still feels odd.
Yeah. And at least there's that. Like, at least, like, a lot of these guys aren't gonna actually get snubbed. Because
Yeah.
that would be even more of a cause for outrage if they did get snubbed that way. Um, but I don't know. Like, I do think an all-star game appearance or a Pro Bowl, for these players, it's not, like... The idea of getting more fans to watch the All-Star game or watch the Pro Bowl, that's always been an issue. And it's not one that's going to be that easily solved by just saying, oh, here's a player from your favorite team, go have at her. Like, it's a bigger issue than that. And I think it's just taking away the accomplishment that things like this have on a player's career. Like, it's a thing to be like, oh, I'm a 7-time Pro Bowler, I'm a 7-time All-Star. Like, you're just taking away the actual sense of accomplishment from it. By just giving it to guys willy-nilly because
And
they're
that was the
supposedly
exact
the best player
argument
on their
against it
team.
when it was implemented, and it just feels very wrong to have it this way. If we want, we can move on to the Central Division, though. I touched on it very lightly. with the Connor Bedard pick, but he becomes the youngest NHL All-Star ever. Joining him on this from the Central Division is Clayton Keller, Nathan McKinnon, Jake Ottinger, Kaprizov. I always forget how to say his name. I always feel bad about that one. Philip Forsberg, Robert Thomas, Connor Hellebuck. A lot of good picks here. A lot of very, very good players. These are every single player on this board feels like an all-star, at least to me, where it's just like I honestly when I haven't fully taken a look at the other teams that other than the Pacific. I'm kind of letting it all come to me as we're going here. But so far, the Central looks absolutely stacked. Connor Bedard, Nathan McKinnon on the ice at the same time. Holy crap, give it to me now. But I don't know. I don't have a lot of bad things to say here. Again, you can just hit on the same conversation we've been having with the Pacific Division, where it's like, where's Cale Makar? Where's, hell, another player from the Stars? You could bring in, like, Heiskanen.
Robertson.
Yeah. Like, there's a lot of players there who deserve to be here that just aren't because of this rule. And it's kind of dumb. But it is what it is. Do you have anything is there anything here that really sticks out to you?
No, not really. I mean, it's the same thing where it's just the players that are missing just because of the rule. And they'll get voted in eventually, but it just really doesn't feel complete. I do wonder, there's a lot of goalies even in because you got Hellebuck and you got Ottinger and you got Talbot, right? There's already an overload of goalies, and I mean, I don't know how they're going to divvy it up. Like, are you not allowed to vote any more goalies in for the Western Conference because they've already got their 3? Like, there's only one defenseman per conference. You got Hughes in the West and
well, there's going to be
not
a
to
draft,
tip the hand too much Stalin in the East.
So I'm curious how that's all gonna. I'm curious how the draft's gonna work in this case with 4 different teams. I think that'll be a lot of fun. But I mean, once again, the Trick Play All-Star Draft will be happening as well with only 2 teams. Maybe we can bring another person into it. Maybe, who knows? We'll see what happens.
You wanna? Should we get we could get a 4? The first time we bring in 1 guest, and then we bring in
and
2.
We
1-up it.
And then guess what's gonna happen when we get to the NFL draft? We're gonna bring in 30. You're gonna fit 30 people on the screen.
One for each team.
You thought my forehead was big? Just wait till you're looking at 30 of them. Oh, it's gonna be exciting. I'd be down to do that if we can find 2 people. We'll have to see how that ends up working out by the time we get there. But anyway, we can move on. I think is that safe to say? Anything else we want to hit on with the Central? No. Okay. Metropolitan Division is where we're gonna go next. For this one, we have Sebastian Aho.
Boone Jenner represents.
Boone Jenner, which feels very strange, and I'm sure we can talk about that. Jack Hughes, Matt Barzell, Shesterkin, Travis. Do you know how to say his last name? I struggle with that one. Konechny? I don't know. Konechny. I see that guy's name a lot, but every time I look at it, it's like I'd never heard it out loud for some reason. Sidney Crosby. I wonder how you pronounce that guy's last name. Tom Wilson. So a lot of interesting ones here, I think.
Tom Wilson making it in.
Yeah, that's been a conversation that's been had a little bit. Tom Wilson making it in. Philly. Like, there's a lot of not very good teams in this division. A lot of players make sense. Like Jack Hughes, obviously. Matt Barzell, obviously. Sidney Crosby, obviously. Like, and then the rest of the team, Shesterkin, again, obviously. But, like, past that, there's a lot of players here who are just kind of... It sticks out to you because you're like, why are they all-stars? You pointed out Boone Jenner right off the drop, right? Like, that's a really obvious one where I'd have to pull up his stats, but it feels odd to have him representing.
It's just because that Columbus team is terrible. So like it's again like it's gonna sound like a broken record, but it's the same thing where Columbus doesn't deserve to have an all-star this year. It's not like Johnny Gaudreau is their only all-star, like, star caliber player, but he hasn't played very well and he doesn't deserve it. So I don't know. Is Boone Jenner the best team on the Blue Jackets? I don't know. I mean, again, I haven't been grinding Blue Jackets tape religiously, because they're a terrible team and they don't deserve to have any All-Stars. Nobody on the Blue Jackets is an All-Star, which shows when you have to scrounge for guys like Boone Jenner to make the All-Star team. No disrespect to Boone Jenner, like the guy's been in the league for a long time. Like, props to him for making it, and it's a great accomplishment for your career. But it's not like he deserves it. Yeah, 18 points in 29 games played. That's not the.
That's nothing.
That's
special.
not the most impressive. I don't know. Just put one of their young guys in there at least. Put in Fantilli or something.
And I mean,
Cylinder,
you're sending your captain.
Put in somebody exciting.
I guess like there's something there, maybe, but I don't know. I agree with you. It's a little odd. That's for sure.
Because what is Boone? Is Boone Jenner even a first line player?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. Like
He's,
you said, I have been.
Boone Jenner is currently 8th in points. Like,
is he really on
his own team?
Wow.
Yeah, Gaudreau, Werenski, Fantilli, Marchenko, Provorov, I don't even know how to say that guy's name. Vorunkov and Danforth are currently ahead of him.
Wow, that's pretty surprising to me.
To Boone Jenner's credit, he has played less games than all of them, but still.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, most of those names I still wouldn't want on the All-Star game team either.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. Like, I think we could really pick this apart if we wanted to, and like just look into like even Philly. I feel like you could make the same argument where it's like do you really want
Konechny's had a good year though?
Has he? Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just me not knowing enough about. I am sorry, Konechny. I do not know your game.
35 points in 38 games.
Okay, that is deserving.
So almost at a point.
I will happily bite the bullet on that one. I was wrong, but I will say Boone Jenner.
That's the difference.
It's the funny thing where like it almost feels like the NHL is trying to do the thing that we all did with the John Scott thing, where they're trying to like do it on purpose, where they're sending over a guy who shouldn't be here. But it's like that takes away the fun of it. Well, we want to fan vote a funny guy in.
It does take away the fun of it, and it's also not like Boone Jenner is like the funny part about John Scott was that he
was literally an AHL
when
player.
He played.
Yeah. John Scott is a hero.
That's the best the All-Star game has ever been.
Oh yeah, I love that year.
Because John Scott played fantastic in that game too. Right?
Oh yeah, he kicked ass.
He was unironically the MVP. Like.
Oh yeah, no, and he deserved it too. John Scott is an absolute hero. Just for him.
That's the best the All-Star game.
I'm throwing him on the screen. If you do not know John Scott's story, salute the flag here, ladies and gentlemen. Like, John Scott, what a hero.
What a guy.
I miss that All-Star. That was such a time to be alive.
That was a broken record. That's the best the All-Star game has ever been.
Yep. No, and that's the
most excited I've ever been for it.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, I totally agree with you. I think that is the best it's been. That was like one. That was the year where I got super into it, and then the next year I was a lot less into it. We can move on though. I think we've beaten up the Metropolitan Division enough. We can move into the second part of the East here in the Atlantic, which is headed by David Pastrnak, Rasmus Dahlin, Alex DeBrincat, Sam Reinhart, Nick Suzuki, Brady Tkachuk, Nikita Kucherov, Austin Matthews. A lot of very good players there, a lot of very deserving players, but it's again the type of thing where it's like it almost feels like you're just leaving players off because they can't make it.
Because of how good.
Because of how good all these teams are. Most of these teams are really good. Right? Like that's the tough thing. So
honestly the only thing I'm surprised at is not because of the inclusion, just by looking at the stats, but how surprisingly good of a season Sam Reinhart is having. That's impressive.
Yeah, he's having a really
47 points in 38 games. He's tearing it up. Because I was surprised to not see a guy like Tkachuk or Barkov on there, but he's.
Well, I know Kachuk's having a bit of a down year as well. Well, yeah, Kachuk's having a bit of a down year, so I think I don't know. I guess he's just the pick makes sense is kind of where I lost my train of thought, but the pick definitely makes sense in this sense.
Yeah.
But
because the rest of them,
we have
you can't argue with.
Like we were just talking about how
The
the
rest of
All-Star
them
game
can't
hasn't been as good. I'm kind of hoping the draft brings it back to that, to how good it's been in years past at certain points. Because there's certain memories we all have of like the All-Star skills competition and the All-Star games, and like that really stick out. I'm sure everybody, like at least I have a couple personal favorites that I'm sure a lot of people share. Which John Scott, that's a top tier one. Corey Perry throwing his glove, like stuff like that really just like stick out to you when you think about it. And it feels like we haven't had one of those moments in a while. So hopefully we get back to that. Hopefully I think it needed a change, so I'm all for it.
Yeah. I did like the format they had before, and I do think the player draft is a little bit like we've talked about this. We had a segment about this, but I do think it is I'm not a big fan of the player draft, but I also see where you're coming from in terms of like something needed to spice it up at this point. It had been growing a little bit stale. So while I'm not the biggest personal fan of the player draft as a concept, I welcome the change, and I'm interested to see how it goes.
Yep, and I totally agree with you. I think that just about does it. We've gone through every single player. Not a lot of bad ones. It's more just the crappy part about all these players being excluded from the first naming, that just leaves you kind of scratching your head a little bit on why Leon Draisaitl, Cale Makar, Mitch Marner. I could go on why all of these players just didn't make it because their teams are good. Like it feels weird to penalize teams for being good. I guess that's kind of
it does.
Like where we can end it off right there. It feels like a strange place to just leave it, I guess, where it's like why would you leave this rule?
It also feels weird to have the NHL pick the starting 32 and then ask the fans to fix their mistakes.
Yeah, actually that's a really good way to put it. Yeah, like that is a very odd thing, because I mean, especially after the whole John Scott debacle, who knows, maybe we'll get like, I don't know, name me a funny Oiler over Leon Draisaitl. That'd be awesome.
Ryan McLeod. McLeod. Put Ryan McLeod in the All-Star
Get Ryan McLeod in the All-Star game. Spread it around, ladies and gentlemen. We want Ryan McLeod.
According to my dad, he's been playing very well.
Oh, okay. Well, then that's less funny. Give me come on. Send having
Ryan McLeod in the All-Star game is so funny, because there's only so good as. Because my dad is a diehard Oilers fan. He's gonna hype up anybody who's on the Oilers and breathing.
I guess. Yeah, that's fair.
Back when you put like Zach Cassian in the All-Star game.
Yeah, send Dan Vladar. I don't know why. Just do it.
It's his last. Because this is your one nice thing you'll have with Dan Vladar, because otherwise you just want to get rid of him so we could bring up Dustin Wolf. You put him in the All-Star game, let him.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Put him in the All-Star game, parade around in a Flames jersey for a little bit before you ship him off to like Washington or something.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about at all. Actually, that wasn't my plan all along, and definitely not me trying to convince the Shadow Council to put Dan Vladar in the All-Star game so that his draft stock goes up and doesn't make him look like a goalie who has an .888 save percentage. I think it'll work.
You should take over from Craig Conroy, Simon. Really.
I think I should.
Or no.
Do you think I'm marketing?
They need to put you in. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Everybody should trade for Dan Vladar. Trade me your first. Just do it.
If people just stare at this picture of Dan Vladar on the sexy reverse for long enough,
that is a sick photo.
That is a sick photo.
That is a sick photo.
It's
that makes Dan Vladar look like an elite goalie. God, isn't Dan Vladar the most elite goalie you've ever seen? You should trade for him.
Wow, you really should.
You really should.
GMs who are definitely watching this.
God, everybody knows that good goaltenders wear number 80. Just trade for him.
Come on, Steve. Come on, Stevie Y.
You know you want Vladar.
Wouldn't you love to see good old buddy Dan in some red and white, but a different red and white this time?
Yeah, different red and white. Damn right. Okay, anyway, coming up next, NBA.
So in NBA news, the biggest news of the week was the Raptors making some moves. Now, obviously, we're a long way removed from 2019. They're not winning another championship anytime soon. And we're kind of seeing them start to rebuild, tear down the roster, get rid of some of their big pieces. There's been rumors about a Siakam trade, but the big domino that fell before those rumors was the trade of OG Anunoby, Precious Achua, and Malachi Flynn, most notably Anunoby, to the Knicks for RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quickly, and a second-round pick. Obviously, a sign of kind of where the Raptors are going. And we've seen it kind of work out as a little bit of a win-win. Both teams have been playing well since players have swapped sides. But what's your kind of initial reaction been to this trade, Simon? And what do you think about it for the Raptors and for the Knicks?
Well, I like most people thought RJ Barrett would be a lot better coming into the NBA, and he just hasn't shown it. Like, he's been good at points, bad at others, and I don't hate it because you're sending a Canadian player back to Canada. Maybe that does a little bit to spark their want to be better, and maybe he turns into something good for Toronto. As for the Knicks, they're getting a really good wing defender in Anunoby. That's what he was for the Raptors, and I'm sure he'll continue to be that for the Knicks. So if I'm looking at it on both sides, I don't think, like you said, both teams are honestly winning this one a little bit. Like, it's not really a bad pickup from either squad. You're kind of just swapping two players that you're just hoping are going to excel on both sides, for both sides. Like, so I can't say I'm mad at it. If I was a Raptors fan, I don't think I'd be mad at it. If I wasn't a Raptors fan, which I'm not, I wouldn't be mad at it either. Like, I think it's a win-win is kind of where I'd land on it.
Yeah, and it's the kind of thing you had to do to rebuild a franchise, right? Because if you're looking at, because before tonight, where it's looking like the Raptors are going to lose to the why is Siri popping up there? Get out of there, Siri. Yeah. Yeah, don't interrupt me, Siri. There we go. Anyways, before tonight, where the Raptors look like they're kind of going to get shut out by the Kings, they had won a couple games in a row with Quickly and Barrett on their team, and I don't think the Knicks have lost since they made this trade either. So it does look like a win-win. And for the Raptors, you're kind of just trying to get a little bit younger, right? Quickly being a first-round pick in the 2020 draft, he's only 24 years old and has played pretty well for the Raptors so far in the games that he's played. He put up 28 against the Cavs. No, he didn't. Sorry, that's minutes. He put up 14 against the Cavs. Put up 26 against the Grizzlies. I was like, ooh, those look like really good numbers. Only 10 against the Kings, so a little bit of a down night, but has flashed some potential so far. I think it'll be. I think it's the exact kind of trade that both teams need to make. Because obviously the Knicks are a lot more of in a win now mode, and the Raptors are in a that's a retool for the future. And somebody like Quickly providing potentially a piece of that, being a first round talent in the past, and a guy like RJ Barrett kind of being a potential reclamation project. It seems like it'll work out, and I think it'll be interesting to see where things go in terms of a potential Siakam trade down the line for the Raptors, because that's kind of seems to be where things are going.
Yeah, and like you said, one team's getting young, one team's getting better, and I think that's exactly how I describe this trade. I think if I'm the Raptors, I definitely like it. Like you said, you're getting Quickly's a talented guy. I was kind of worried about it at first for them when his tweet came out, where it looked like he was responding. He found out about the trade on Twitter. I don't know if you heard about that, Caleb, where like I don't remember what he said. I'm sure I can bring it up. I'm going to take this off the screen so that I can go find it. But Quickly was rather shocked to find out that he had been traded to Toronto. And I think that knowing the past of players not wanting to play here, or not wanting to play up in Toronto, it's not something that would have been that shocking, I guess, if he had not necessarily wanted to play here.
Yeah.
Give me a minute. I'm looking for it. Caleb Stahl. I'll
Oh
find
wow, I know so much about basketball.
it. Yeah, I'm finding it.
Yeah, no, yeah, I think
You can thank. You
the
can
big
shout out clutch points.
Oh, there we go. We got the tweet.
We got the tweet. It's a little blurry on my screen. Hopefully, it's not that blurry. But it was.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my goodness. Where it's just, it looked like he was responding to it on Twitter, which I think is not a good sign when you're trading for a player. When that player goes, "Oh, I was traded." Well, live on the internet, probably not a good thing, but it's looked like you said, he has been pretty good for the Raptors. Hopefully, he continues to be good for the Raptors. I don't know. I don't have too much to say on this, honestly. I think you hit on it really well, on just the fact that one team that needs to get young is getting younger, one team that needs to get better is getting better. And I think Anunoby is one of those guys who can really help any team just with how good of a just defensive forward he is. You're also bringing on another really good forward, or I believe he plays power forward or center, and Precious Achua. And Flynn has been good at points for the Raptors. I don't think you can be mad at it if you're either team. I think both teams are just getting better from this one. Nothing too controversial.
To your point about Anunoby being a great defensive player, I got a stat here that he is plus 74 in the 106 minutes he's played as a New York Knick, which is the highest plus minus for any NBA player in history for the first 3 games for his franchise. So,
holy, obviously
it's turning out pretty well, and it is kind of like that. Also, there's the side of it in terms of the Raptors getting younger and the Knicks getting better, like you phrased it. It's also just in terms of what they need, because the Raptors needed a little bit more of a retooled offense. And Quickly's kind of providing that, whereas the Knicks needed a little bit more help on the defensive side of the ball. And I think each player kind of just fits in a little bit better into their new system than they did their old system. And it provides a little bit more of like a skill set difference. Because I don't think the talent gap is all that big between the players that were swapped here. There obviously is one, but it's not the biggest. It's just about where those talents lie and how those kind of match up.
Like you can sit here and go, OG is gonna give you exactly what OG has given you for the last couple seasons, and you don't necessarily have that with players like RG Barrett. And I mean, it works out how it works out, right? Like with those younger guys, you never know what they'll develop into. But so far, it's looked good for the Raptors, and it's looked good for the Knicks. So. But then again, like you said, only 3 games gone since this trade happened. So a lot can happen for the rest of the season. You never really know. By the time this episode could come out, we could end up looking stupid for saying both teams won this, but
we'll see. It is a kind of thing that you have to watch play out over a season. That's going to be the biggest thing.
Yep, for sure.
Especially in a sport like basketball.
I feel like we're just basically stalling on this one. we're spinning in the water a little bit. But I think we kind of hit on it a little bit too early, but we still hit on it nonetheless. Very much win-win trade.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning into Trick Play this week. If you liked what you saw, like we mentioned at the start of the episode, make sure to check out our YouTube page, our Instagram page, TikTok, Twitter, and then if you are on any of those platforms and don't know where to find us in an audio format, make sure that you check us out over on the Fresh Take Network. I can't do the normal thing because we got to shout out to our Twitter. Oh, wait, now I can. Boom. Wrong corner.
Wrong corner. I nailed it that time. Pointed right at that light switch. I know where to put that finger. We're good to go.
There we go. And I had such a good streak.
I know. You were killing it for a while there. You were doing better than I was.
I was. That's embarrassing. Yeah. I can start a new streak, though. That's okay.
You should be ashamed.
I should be. Okay.
Shame.
I should be. Speaking of who needs to be shamed this week, I'm gonna continue. I don't know if I was negative last week or not. I don't remember if I gave a good shout out or not. But I feel like I'm normally more negative than not. But I don't care because it's more fun. I'm gonna give my anti shout out of the week to David Tepper. owner of the Carolina Panthers. Not only has he been a absolutely terrible owner of this team and just completely micromanaged everything into the ground, and there's the whole thing about when he fired Frank Reich, he excluded certain reporters from the press conference, which is just, yeah, I don't know, buddy. Like maybe just there's some owners are a little bit too hands-on, and Tepper is clearly one of them. And it's not working. Panthers are 2-14, and very clearly the worst team in the league with not a lot of a positive future. And Tepper is clearly starting to realize that, as his most recent outburst shows. It was in the last game against the Jacksonville Jaguars, with the Jaguars playing C.J. Beathard at quarterback with Trevor Lawrence out. So as bad as the Panthers are, it's not an unwinnable game. But the C.J. Beathard-led Jaguars just smoke them. I believe it's 26-0. The Panthers played terribly. And so how does David Tepper respond to this? If you are a normal, empathetic human being, what you could probably do is just take the loss and move on. It's a lost season. You already know this. Just move on with your life. Try to retool through the draft. Whatever. This season isn't for you. But David Tepper is so fed up with the team at this point that what he decides to do in his little owner's box, there's in Jacksonville, there's some Jags fans that are out talking trash, and he decides at the end of the game that he's going to take his half-drunken beer that's full of probably backwash and ice and all the nasty things,
Backwash,
and
ice,
just
everything nice.
Yeah, chucks it at the fan, douses the fans in front, douses the Jacksonville fans in front of him, with a cup of beer. So for that absolutely classless move, and to the NFL for only finding this multi-billionaire $300,000 for that, like, come on, you can do better. $300,000 is literally like a penny for this man, and that just can't go unexcused. Like, what are you doing? Throwing drinks at opposing fans at games is just not something you can do. So screw you, David Tepper. You get my anti-shout out of the week. I'm so sorry, Panthers fans.
Yeah, I mean, that is bad. there's not much ways to dance around that one. That is bad. I mean, I'm surprised he only got fined $300,000. You'd think, is he getting banned from like going and watching any of these games for a bit? No.
Oh, no. Nope. There's absolutely no repercussions other than the $300,000 fine.
Yeah. Okay. That's really odd. That's for sure. Yeah. I have a good shout out this week, thankfully, to balance it out.
Oh, yeah.
That I already mentioned it earlier in the podcast, but I'll mention it one more time just for the people in the back who didn't hear me say it the first time. We're going to be having our first guest on next week, which is very exciting. He's going to be coming on to talk about the Flames. We're going to have Anand on. You might know him from Flames Twitter. This is a photo of, because I went on his show and chatted about the Flames with him, and he's going to be returning the favor, coming over here and talking about the Flames with us. And we're going to see what ends up happening next week. If something big happens, like if a big trade happens, which some Flames fans seem to believe something might be coming this week, then we'll come on and chat about that. If not, we'll just talk about the Flames overall. It's been a minute since we've done a really overall. They've had an interesting season, so I'm excited to chat about it with and just have our first guest on. This is exciting. We're going up in the world, Caleb.
Oh, we are, absolutely. Look at us go.
Look at us go.
It only took 27 episodes in. We're at a good pace.
I was about to say it's the 27. Everybody knows it's the 27th episode when you truly peak. Like, it's that number when you really become a true podcaster. Once you reach 27, you're good.
Well, I think it's the 28th episode that we're gonna peak with our first guest episode.
That's true.
Then it'll be all downhill from there.
That's an absolutely good point.
If you want to watch us peak, tune in next week.
Yeah, no, dead on, exactly. And I mean, you hit on all the big points right off the top, and make sure to check us out everywhere that you can, because I've been trying pretty hard lately to make sure that we get a lot of just putting as much things on all of our platforms. We've been trying to bring in as many new viewers as possible because we want as many people to be able to just enjoy whatever the hell we do here along with us. It's been a hell of a ride so far. Make sure to check out next week. We'll have a big episode coming up. So, yeah, stay tuned for that.